Call this meeting to order, please. Ron, would you like to read this?
Sure. Ready? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There he is.
Now we go to the consent calendar.
Public forum?
Excuse me?
Public forum?
Oh, public forum. We'd like to welcome members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to the district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, cannot act on any item unless it is noticed on the agenda. Person speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending upon the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. Pardon?
Of course you do. Do I have to turn anything on?
No.
Nope.
The green light's on.
Oh, okay.
Rewired.
We're modern now.
Thank you. Someone came up to me this weekend and talked to me about the quality of their water out in the Campos Seco area and said that when they take a shower, they are overwhelmed by chlorine fumes, and they think the quality of TUD water out there sucks. So every time I still go to the store, I still see all these people buying bottled water. So I drink the water and I'm okay, but I'm still hearing a lot of complaints about the quality of the water, so that concerns me. So.
Okay, thank you.
Just let me know if you want to go up there.
Why don't you give a quick, I think it's quick, that's decent.
Well, on the, we also receive lots of compliments on the quality of our water. I think it depends on sometimes maybe where you live. Some systems require a little more chlorine than others to meet CT requirements, to meet the long distance of travel. I talk about this age of water, and all that stuff leads into it. What else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. And, some people are more susceptible, more prone to notice chlorine, notice the taste than others. So,
Where was this again?
Campos Seco. Head towards Jamestown.
Right.
Yeah. So currently, just so you know, I don't know the nature of this call, but currently the bacteriologicals are pretty high in Sonora, so we had to jack up the chlorine at the treatment plant to meet CT time.
Okay. Just so you know, the water at Sugar Pine is fantastic. Doesn't taste like it has anything in it, just pure old water.
Well, I do want to say staff takes every complaint seriously, and we work with staff to make sure it's fine-tuned, but the reality is it's always a balance with chlorine contact time, keeping the organics down. There's high flows, turbidity, bacteriological, so it's always a fine dance to make sure this water quality is good. So I know staff's doing the best they can, but the reality is we got to keep the chlorine contact time going. Then you end up with potential disinfection byproducts and HAAs. So it's a fine balance to keep in compliance.
Yep, thanks.
Ron had a question.
I just want to make a comment that Campos Seco is basically at the bottom of the system. So,
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
It's a long ways from the plant.
Thanks. Next we'll go to consent calendar. Melissa?
Okay, consent calendar. Item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of March 12th, 2019, and special board meeting of March 14th, 2019. Item number 2, to support the Aqua Coalition on the Safe Water Drinking Trust, SB 669, and unite in a letter of support with Calaveras County Water District and Amador Water Agency on SB 669. Item number 3, award contract to NorCal Pipeline Services for the 2019 Cured in Place Pipe Sewer Rehabilitation Project.
Would anyone like to make a motion on the minutes of the last board meeting?
I'll do
We have to
so.
open it up to,
On consent.
Right, and the
Oh,
whole
I'm
calendar.
sorry.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
I just had a couple questions on that. One is, I'm all in favor of sending this water tax letter. I mean, this is ridiculous that, we're sitting here struggling to try and balance, what we're getting from a revenue standpoint with the ability of our area to afford their water bills, and now the state wants us to send $1 to $10 that we've got to do all the accounting and then try and glean some of that back later on down the road. I think it's just, we keep hiding all these other fees and other taxes, and I think it's ridiculous.
I think it might be helpful just to announce what SB 669 is. It is.
Pull it.
Yeah, to talk about, we should pull it. I think it's worth pulling and highlighting.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I just had one other quick question on the lining, and Eric's not here, so I don't know whether you can ask that. But was NorCal, I think they're the group we've used in the past to do all the lining, so we're very comfortable with that group, and I think
Yes.
the per unit price is in line with what we've been paying before.
Yes,
So-
and it is standard, and typically Eric, our district engineer, did say staff usually approves these because it's already in the capital improvement plan. But I think these should go to the board, so that was my decision to put it on consent. It is routine business, but I want your board to be aware and familiar with these type of agreements.
All right, well, why don't we pull that one for further discussion and then amend the motion for the other
Sure.
two?
Okay.
Whoever made the motion, I think it was, is that okay with you to amend?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion. You got it.
Okay, second.
So we are approving
Just the minutes.
just the minutes? Okay.
And the NorCal pipeline, number
Right.
3,
Okay, so 1 and 3.
1 and
Okay.
3,
Oh, okay.
and pulling 2.
Pulling two. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just for further discussion and information.
Okay.
We have a motion for. do we
Yeah,
have-
and a second.
Okay. Been regularly moved and seconded that we approve items 1 and 3 on the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Go for it.
I wanted to also comment and tag on to what Ron said is there's a great irony in us being a disadvantaged community ourselves and have multiple in Tuolumne County having to pay a tax that would go into the general fund and then be redistributed to help disadvantaged communities. And so the irony has not escaped anybody up and down the mountains on this one.
So just for everyone's understanding, Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed using general fund dollars, a line item tax on all water utility accounts statewide to fund disadvantaged communities, health and safety, drinking water throughout the state. Primarily, the communities are located in South San Joaquin Valley, where there are a number of small disadvantaged communities on groundwater that don't have good, high-quality water. It's expensive to treat. It's expensive to upgrade these systems. And because of the lack of funding, these small rural disadvantaged communities have suffered. And in this day and age, I think the state legislature, the governor, even Aqua all say, we all need to do our part and help people in disadvantaged communities with good, high-quality water. Now, everyone agrees there. What they don't agree on is how to go about funding consolidation and helping these small rural disadvantaged systems. Governor Newsom has proposed a line item on all utility bills that would be mandated through the I believe the legislature ultimately, but it's being pushed by Governor Newsom. And if it becomes law, then TUD, along with all other water utilities in the state of California, would be required to add a line item that would tax our ratepayers anywhere ranging, and I don't think the numbers have been finalized, so they have a wide range, $1 to $12 per connection. That money
per
would
month? Yeah.
per month. That money would then go to the state of California to manage and reallocate those funds to help those disadvantaged communities. And as Director Balin mentioned, Tuolumne County is considered disadvantaged. It may be that we get taxed and then reallocate that money. I don't know. I think there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out. But Tuolumne Utilities District is a member in Aqua. Aqua opposes a water tax. It's been pushed for a number of years. This is just the latest version of it. And in lieu of the governor's water tax proposal, Aqua is sponsoring SB 669, and that's through, I forget the name of the legislator, but it's in your staff report. Caballero. And that's working. The proposal is for the governor, because there's excess general fund money in the state's budget right now, to seed a special account to assist disadvantaged communities. And once that money is seeded, that would then go out to these various disadvantaged communities and continue to use state's general fund money to be able to work through that and grant holders. So that's a competing measure, and this item is approving your board approval of supporting SB 669, which will provide a letter of support countersigned by our sister agencies to go to Aqua and the legislator Caballero.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for taking the lead on that and doing that on behalf of CCWD and Amador as well. So I appreciate that.
Any other comment?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Public comment on it?
Pardon?
Wouldn't we need to put some public comment on
Yeah,
it since we pulled it?
Any
public comment?
Well, I recommend we send it to some more people than just the author of the legislation, specifically our own personal legislators for this county. I don't know who else you want to go to. But Caballero is not ours, so.
No, the closest she gets to us is Merced.
Yeah, whenever this has come up, it's always been talking about dealing
Right.
with the water companies that have contaminated water with the nitrates and everything else from the ag group, and that's where they were looking to tie those together. So I think we'd be way down on the list to get money back on this program.
And we'll send, with approval by your board, we'll CC all of our local legislators and work with Aqua on this. This all of Aqua's fighting the governor's proposal. So this is being pursued by all water agencies and utilities throughout the state to support Aqua against the governor's proposal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Caballero was just the author. It's,
Right.
you're sending it to Bigelow and.
Right.
Okay, yeah, so it's going locally, but good clarification, Carol.
Right. Any other public comment?
Okay, I'll move that we, where is it?
Item number 2.
Yeah, I move that we approve item number 2 of the consent calendar.
Or second?
I'll second.
It's been regularly moved and seconded that we approve, or that we support item number 2 on the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We'll now move on to regular business.
Okay, item number 4, adopt a resolution for the 2019 Tuolumne County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan and Annex F related to the Tuolumne Utilities District.
So I'll handle this quickly, I hope. The hazard mitigation plan that TUD participated with the county in last year is largely unchanged. This is more of ministerial revisions to comply with OES's requirements on hazard mitigation planning. The few revisions that were done to the county's hazard mitigation plan. There's a TUD annex that your board's already approved as well. No changes or revisions were done to the TUD annex. So this is just to comply with OES. It's ministerial. They do require an updated resolution so that we can continue to comply with OES's requirements. And this is for all the hazard mitigation grant funding, which there's pretty good funding through pre-disaster mitigation and whenever there's disaster declarations, but we need a current resolution. And again, it's not changing anything having to do with the TUD annex, so it's really a ministerial action.
Okay, great. Well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate, I think there's a greater level of transparency with this than there was the first time around. So, or at least I was able to pull more out of it this time around. So I just wanted to say that the first thing that I look at, and I appreciate the greater level of transparency, but, you know, in keeping with how our story, you know, part of our story is what do we do if we run out of water? I mean, what do we do? And in really looking at this document, it doesn't really answer that. And I'm concerned that in our plan, that when we talk about drought, that drought is mentioned in there. Because like you said, we need to go after money, either FEMA money after a disaster or reducing the risks money before the disaster. And so therefore that would tell me that anything we want to go after money for needs to be in this plan. So I'm concerned that drought funding, or just even what's the plan B if we have no, if the flume is compromised? What is our plan B immediately? Are we going to pump out of Maloney's? What is the plan B? And I would think that would be, you know, we all know of water insecurity. So that's what, and then I just have to say before you say, before I'm done, is that Bill Coyle, who was the DWR head lead on Oroville spillway repair during the crisis up there, when we were at the March 15th meeting to listen to Peter Brostrom talk about outdoor uses of potable water delivery, he mentioned that it's very important that we get drought contingency plans in order now with the county. And so that really got my gears working. Well, okay, a drought contingency plan should be maybe part of this. And regardless, what is the plan if we run out of water for whatever reason? And that's why I'm concerned here that it's not in the 51E conditions or really anywhere. And who are we talking to? You know, are we talking to the county on what's our plan? What's our plan B? Like if it went down tomorrow, okay, what do we do right now? Where do we go? Because we need an agreement. Are our pumps ready to go in Maloney's? Do we have those permissions in order? I don't know. So just, that's my concern.
okay.
So we did talk about this in a strategic plan a bit. I'm not sure we're mature enough in that discussion to revise this hazard mitigation plan. I don't think that precludes us from disaster mitigation funding if we were to pursue something on dealing with fire risk associated with the wooden flume or some other project. But I know that in our strategic planning, we are talking about a range of parallel work efforts to tighten up our water supply reliability. That includes the regional treatment plants. It includes talking to PG&E about the flume. It includes doing another tabletop exercise. If it were to burn, what are we going to do tomorrow? One, by the way, was done from what staff's told me about 5-6 years ago. So it's probably time to resurrect that to make sure that all the pieces are still in place. And if we pull the trigger, it works seamlessly. We're talking about USBR and how we're going to work with them on agreement out of New Maloney's. As you know, we're talking to PG&E. We're talking about a range of options. One of your items today is Cal Poly, looking at efficiencies on the ditch system. I know staff's working on efficiencies in the potable water distribution system. So staff is pursuing a range of options to ensure we have a reliable water supply, both on the water supply side, but on the demand management side. And so I think we're looking at a comprehensive range of options to do what you're suggesting, Director Balin. And I see Lisa here. She worked on this plan with your board last year, but I'm not sure if you have more to add, but I know that we can still seek disaster funding with this current version. We just need the updated resolution from the board to comply with their requirements.
Yes, board members, it's Lisa Westbrook from Public Relations for TUD. I did want to mention in the original plan that we were revising that was originally from 2012, Barbara, they did not have anything mentioned on the drought. That section was added in the county plan, and since we're an annex of the county, we would be qualifying for anything related drought resistance or anything drought funding. So that was added, and also what was added was the hazard tree situation that was affecting Tuolumne County in general, and anything regarding, but he expanded actually the wildfire risk for the whole county. So those sections I was involved with Tracy Riggs, the county. So they did think they needed to be expanded, and everyone in the group, thought that was a good point to take. And so if any kind of funding if the flume went down, anything, we would be able to, get funding for that if it was available.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, and that's awesome. But this is a little bit of, if the flume went down and we ran out of water, what's our plan?
We do have that listed actually in our TUD emergency action plan. There's actually a binder that we all have, and we have gone through that process, and we have a vendor list. Now, should we do it again? Absolutely. We need to update that and keep it going and do another tabletop. And we actually did probably, I'm thinking it was 5 years ago, a county-wide tabletop at the Stryker Court with the county about a fire coming down through the flume.
So could
PG&E
we reference
was there, and
that in our, is it a they're really kind of pointing to the same thing, a drought contingency plan as well as a drill. Can we reference that in this multi-jurisdictional plan?
the district itself can't. This has already gone to Cal OES and FEMA for approval.
No, our Appendix F.
Appendix F, that's already set to go and be approved by FEMA and Cal OES at this point.
Then,
So it's
so
been,
why are we discussing it then?
because we just need a resolution to send to FEMA and Cal OES.
The county made ministerial revisions to their hazard mitigation plan. And the county board of supervisors, I heard, adopted it at their last board of supervisor meeting. So they needed a resolution adopting it by TUD so that we're in complete compliance with OES for this hazard mitigation grant plan, so that if and when we want a hazard mitigation grant, it shows we have a current adopted resolution.
How often does this get updated?
Typically, usually every 5 years.
Okay, well, I think Barbara's points are valid that we could, look at when we update it, with.
As I mentioned, nothing changed in the TUD annex here. It was all county work that was done with OES.
Yes.
And then on the water contingency plan, just to address that question, I believe the urban water management plan that is mandated, they're one of those unfunded mandates by the state, which TUD does every 5 years, also includes a water contingency plan. And so we're ahead of the curve on that new conservation mandate on water contingency planning.
Okay, I'm concerned about drought contingency, like if we actually run out of water, depending on the severity and the prolongedness of a drought, what's our plan? That's a little bit different than, getting the flume, that we have water
Yes.
up there. This is a sustained and prolonged and severe drought. What are we going to do?
And that's in the contingency plan. That's in our urban water management plan right now.
Okay, so then I guess get back to our little plan. Okay, Appendix F, extreme weather history. There just is no mention of the 1977 drought. I mean, we talk about volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that, but I'm just saying, what about something about the 77 drought? This is extreme weather behavior. And the drought then of 2014-15 to point back at. I understand that this is ministerial.
Well, remember, this was a county update with OES. TUD did not update its annex. This was a previous annex that your board worked on, and there were no revisions to it. I mean, we could ask,
Well, we did.
but then we're gonna have to go through
Did
this whole process
update
again.
the version from 2012 to 2017.
So you did this 2 years ago?
Yes.
Right, and as I said, I'm not the same person I was then, or whatever the same I mean, it's here now. This is, I'm understanding from DWR that it's critical that we get drought contingency plans in, or at least have that addressed. You're saying that we
do.
have them, and so that we have to pump out a Maloney's or something, then all those agreements, I'm assuming, are in place?
No.
Okay, then the other thing, even though this is just ministerial, the ability, and even in the county's plan, and I didn't read the county plan with a fine-tooth comb, but I really have concerns about plans that just sort of get the job done so we can get the money, or plans that really mention everything, including if you're going to talk about our vulnerable critical infrastructure, then I think at very least we need to mention our conveyance system, like our San Diego, our Columbia, our Shaw's Flat ditch system. Those are not mentioned in this. Pumps are mentioned. They're called boosters, correct? Okay, so at least that asset is mentioned. Okay, so if we need money and we need to get those back, when you think about
Those are operational. Those pumps down at Maloney's are fully operational. We exercise them every year. So
Yeah.
they're good to go.
and it's great
As long as
that
there's water in there. There's gotta be water in the lake.
it's great that those are mentioned, because some of the deferred maintenance in Oroville, they can't recover those costs now. They're out. I don't know the details on that, but we just need to learn from that. I mean, so I just find ours, even I find what's missing under specific critical facilities at risk is our ditch system. Even though it's mentioned the canal system, and one of the problems that makes it a specific critical facility at risk is that we don't own it. We're kind of at the mercy of PG&E. That's huge to me. That is a problem. That's critical. They are our water delivery people, even though they don't like to admit it. You know, so that's a critical facility, because it's currently private, and we don't have any jurisdictional control over it or ownership of it. So right away, I would want that in our document. I mean, so, and then I mean, it's really, at the very least, I don't even think TUD is mentioned in the county acronyms or in our acronyms. And I could have missed it. Is it?
We're completely mentioned in it, the entire document.
Well, I know the entire document.
Right.
And then on page, I'm looking at the county's plan right now on page 96, under a section entitled Drought. It talks about, as a result of the previous 5 years of drought and dealing with the cascading effects on groundwater and tree mortality, and it just goes on and talking about assessing current drought vulnerability to all citizens and taking proactive actions to reduce drought vulnerability where appropriate. Now, it doesn't drill into the detail that TUD staff is currently working on that I just summarized for you. But I don't know if that's the place for a hazard mitigation plan to drill into that level of detail. So I think, again, the main purpose of this was really the county working with OES just to get their plan in compliance with OES. And TUD is really just along for the ride. We just want to, I get, Director Balin, that we don't want to develop a plan that just sits on the shelf just to be able to be eligible for a grant. I don't think that this plan does that. But really, this, when I mentioned ministerial, it was really just about getting your board to approve this so that we can get this to the county and OES so that we are eligible for a grant. And again, this wasn't a comprehensive update for TUD. That was done in 2017, and this was just cleanup between the county and OES. And their request of us to have a board resolution with this latest revision.
Thank you. Want to call? Then we'll ring in.
Yeah, I just had two overall comments. One question was sort of for Dawn was, when we're talking about climate events, does, with all the pictures we saw of snow and everything, there wasn't anything I saw in here related to snow or any events related to that. Is that something that we should be considering in the future, with all the work that we've got to do, or better resiliency?
Well, there is, and maybe this is just confusing. I almost think maybe we just go back to the drawing board. The county plan does have sections on heavy snowfall, freeze, extreme heat, so maybe those sections weren't emphasized, but in the county hazard mitigation plan, remember TUD's an annex.
Right.
And maybe you guys focused on the annex, but in the county's plan, it does get into snowstorms, windstorms, hailstorms, and some of these other issues.
I think the snow with the county more got into road, their road issues, not necessarily our transmission, but, I don't want to overstate it. The only other thing that sort of jumped out at me was protect flumes with what Barbara was talking about. It was a medium priority, right up there with earthquake preparedness. So I thought that, our flume carried a little bit more weight than earthquake preparedness, which I don't think we've had any earthquakes in Tuolumne County in quite a while. So.
Well, maybe if I may, I'll recommend that we don't have to wait 5 years to update this. Mm-hmm. Typically, they're done in planning intervals of 5 years. I wasn't here in 2017 when you did your comprehensive update to the hazard mitigation plan, but if your board's interested, we could make it part of your strategic plan, goals and objectives, and we can bring back an exhaustive update of this annex so that we can add these types of statements into the TUD's annex.
I think it's something we should look at with the overall priority of what we've got going on. I know there's a couple other things that are more important right now, but where does that fit within the schedule of what we're looking at? So I wouldn't mind discussing that in our strategic plan of where it might want to fit in.
I just wanted to comment on your comment regarding the snow and storm event. That's how the district received funding from the 2017 winter events, is because we had a plan adopted. Mm-hmm. So we applied for FEMA funding and received it, and are still receiving funding, including the Lakewood Dam rebuilding. That's all through us applying with CalOES and FEMA funding, because we already had that mentioned in the plan.
Okay, thanks.
Ron?
Okay, well, I appreciate this conversation because as nuts as it sounds, I read every word of that thing, and my name appears at the bottom of the 2017 okay. But in 2017, there was, well, before I go there, I struggled with this thing all the way through. It just did not make a lot of sense to me. And like Director Kopp mentioned, I saw that about the flume being medium, along with volcanoes and earthquakes, or at least volcanoes. And I don't know. I don't know how we came to those conclusions back then, but I do know that at that time, the board wasn't always given really good backup information. So if we're going to do this again, I would appreciate that the board gets the documents that you two were talking about that are supposedly back there, that backs this thing up, so that we can look at that and then be able to apply it to our new, whatever you want to call this. I don't know, I was very frustrated. I really was. So I'll leave it at that.
Any other comments? Barbara?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we table this and bring it up in a special, have an ad hoc, and I would like to be on it, and we really delve into it and really make it, I know time is of the essence, but make it so that it really fits a lot of funding. We do not know what this summer's going to bring in terms of dry conditions, but I just feel like there was enough wrong with this, and we are not in the acronyms, by the way, in the list at the end of the whole document. We're not part of. We should be. TUD should be
Well,
Tuolumne Utilities District.
We're listed in the very beginning of talking about all the districts involved.
Right, but
There's
I'm just
12
saying-
districts.
Well, there's at any rate, there's a whole list of acronyms that you give, at the end of the document.
This is a county document that the county put together. We're only an annex that
Yeah, the
specifies
county didn't put
TUD.
us in. The county did not put us in, and that's important to me, because it signifies that we should be talking about this. We should have the whole community talking about what do we do for drought contingency. We're all in this together, and anyway, that's my word on this, and I understand we need to get it to them so they can get stuff together, but I also know if we're not in the conditions, if fire water draft points or the use of that is not in the county system, or we don't say we're making this water available so we can save our treated water on behalf of the whole community, then I just don't want us to wait for that April and May for our strategic planning. I think this needs to have an ad hoc right now to address some of it. And with all due respect, I thought some of the language and description was pretty value laden. And again, we need to set the stage to be able to attract all kinds of money.
Just for your board's reminder, on page 125, mitigation action 3.2D, TUD will study and seek funding to increase the raw water storage or establish a secure conveyance from Lyons Reservoir to ensure service for both domestic consumption and urban fire protection. So whether they neglected to put TUD in the acronyms, TUD is all over this document. And I don't say don't update this. I'm just concerned if you decide to delay it and there's a disaster and you don't have a qualifying resolution, then you've just, by virtue of not having a current resolution, may put some grant funding at risk. So my suggestion, if I may, would be to revise the recommendation that you adopt the resolution today, but you go through and decide on how you want an exhaustive update of your TUD annex. Now, the county's hazard mitigation plan, that's the county's, and I don't believe we submitted comments. So we can't update the county's hazard mitigation plan, but what your board can do is update the TUD annex to that plan and get that to the county board of supervisors and OES.
Great. Ron?
I'm fine with that recommendation.
Okay, cool. Ron?
I think that this, unfortunately, is a glaring example of how the county does not engage TUD in important things like this at the time that it's being put together. And this is something that I really hope we can work on and make be better. I mean, we should be working with the county hand in hand on anything that has to do with water, sewer, development, septic systems, emergency sort of things, because TUD is going to be a big part of it one way or the other. I mean, so I think that GM Pattison probably has the right idea that we move forward now so that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot and make things tough for the county too. But then I think that this needs to be redone and done properly, and as soon as possible. That's just my opinion.
Barb?
At the very least, I'd like to see drought contingency, because that's different than an outage and getting it back online. Drought contingency means we run out of water. That's because there is no water. Not we'll get the ditch, we'll get the flume back online. That's doable, but we have to figure out who our best friends are. Do they have water in Maloney? So if we can fold in that plan, then a drought contingency plan, so that we're ready to go. Then and also work on improvements on this document ASAP. I too don't want to hold anything up, but I see that I don't want to shoot TUD in the foot. I don't want to have where were you guys? So.
Well, it sounds like we want to do it during our strategic planning. Is that right?
Well, my suggestion is look at it in relation to the other things that we've got going on right now and figure out where it best fits in our priority list during the strategic plan. I agree it needs to be updated, but where is it with the other key issues that we're looking at?
So we'll address the timing at the strategic plan.
That would be my suggestion.
Ron?
Yeah, I just want to point out, our operations manager will remember this well, I'm sure. I think it was in 2013, I can't remember the exact year, but we had a huge wind that came down from the east and toppled trees throughout, especially Twain Hart. One of them went right through the middle of a dentist office filled with people. One of them knifed the flume. And I don't know whether you remember that or not, Don, but it was wild and woolly for several days because we had no water going down the main canal. So this is horribly important, and we got to get it right.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa, by the way, for your comments. Your report.
Public comment?
So just
Public
to
comment?
just to confirm, TUD is mentioned up front in the participants, but in the acronyms, Director Balin is correct. There's no acronym for TUD, or it's not listed in the end of the document for acronyms, and that's in the county hazard mitigation plan.
Okay. Is there any comment from the public?
I think you traveled a bit off your agenda topic, so I recommend that this be agendized for something else. If it's your strategic planning meeting, that's fine. I thought this was due by the end of March, if I remember from the county.
That's yeah. They just adopted their resolution. That's why it's
Yeah.
here for the TUD resolution.
So you don't have
today.
time to dilly-dally around. And then TUD and the county, that's kind of a two-way street. So there was a county meeting with the Board of Supervisors and many department heads on Friday, and no one from TUD was there. There were people from Groveland Community Services District as well as two of their board members. So you guys have to participate too if you want the county to include you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Any other public comment?
County or TUD wasn't invited to the meeting.
We were invited?
We were not invited to
Shame on those
Friday's
people.
special board meeting. I mean, it's a public meeting. We could have attended. Wasn't aware of it.
I was there Monday, though.
Yeah, we were there for the fire community task force meeting.
Well, and then I was there for their budget and additional funding sources meeting.
You were there for a little.
Yeah, I was there for the morning session.
Yes. I take that back.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel this is really, really important. And I disagree with Director Koff in that we'll just see how this stacks up with our other priorities. To me, adding drought in this document and what we're going to do, so everybody who comes here knows what we're going to do, what our plan is there is no higher thing to me. So I just would, if we go ahead and pass it today so that the county can move forward, and I found discrepancies in the county's plan because I'm bothered by just making sure the I's are dotted and T's are crossed but the substance could really, the lack of substance can come back and bite us. That's what I'm saying. Experience is showing us out here in the world that the lack of substance is where people get caught off guard. And so I would like this to be a priority. A high priority is to make sure that we have this really have some meat in it, not just, I'm not knocking it. I just think that there could be improvements for pre and post funding to guide our county. So I would not want to just see it back down into the mix. I think this is a high priority on our strategic plan.
I'm not saying it's not a high priority. I'm just saying that in our strategic planning, we should look at where it sits in the high priority with the other high priority issues we have. I mean, it very well may come out in our strategic plan that it's number one, but I just wanted to look at it in relation to the other components when we're talking about it.
Well, the other choice is to delegate an ad hoc type group to get some of those things in here, and have something working on the side. And again, I'd be totally willing to volunteer for an ad hoc on this.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board? Well, would you like to chair an ad hoc committee?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
That would have to come back. The agenda item is for adoption of the resolution.
Okay.
And if you want to create an ad hoc committee, that would have to be in another agenda item on a future date.
Would that ad hoc committee, forming that ad hoc committee, would that be part of would that be better suited to be in our strategic plan?
Well, that's what I was recommending, is adopt a goal and objective that makes updating the TUD's annex of the hazard mitigation plan a priority. And you could specify when you want it done by. Like any objective, we want X widgets by a certain date. So that, I was recommending putting that into the list of goals and objectives and priorities in your strategic plan. I think for now, if I may, that this hazard mitigation plan, obviously, like any plans, it's comprehensive. There's a million pieces to it. There's always going to be mistakes. This one may have more than what you would like to see. But it does serve the need of what this county requires to comply with OES and disaster mitigation funding. And for staff, that's extremely important that we don't miss potential disaster grant funding. And I think your board gets that part of it. And to the degree that you want to add other specific information related to drought preparedness and action plans, that's laudable. And we could do that. It can be a priority, but it's not something that I think has to be done yesterday. In fact, we're working on this water supply planning as we speak as part of your strategic plan. And we're working on a range of fronts right now to be able to reduce that vulnerability and ensure reliability. And staff's happy to work with your board in any way possible to update the annex and or update our water contingency plan. Overall, I think those plans are all great, but more importantly, it's the actual project that we're moving all of these efforts forward with, and we're still working on that narrative and that conversation with your board about exactly what those are.
So what you're saying is bring this up at the next future strategic planning or for an ad hoc.
Whatever your board would like to do with that, yes.
At the strategic plan.
Yes.
And our next one's next month, right?
April
25th.
25th.
Adopt the
Okay.
resolution
April
now
25th?
and then discuss it at the next strategic plan.
Can we make that a strategic plan agendized item then for the strategic plan?
Well, your board can establish whatever goals and objectives it wants in that strategic plan. And really, we're hoping in the next workshop that we're done by the end of that day, so that the next step from that would be to take whatever, the staff's going to be presenting draft goals and objectives to your board. We've listened. We're going to present a draft. And then if we have anything missing or you need revised, we'll incorporate that into a revised draft and we'll bring it back to your board meeting, probably at the first meeting in May for adoption. And so you're going to have multiple chances to make sure that this item regarding drought contingency, hazard mitigation planning is whatever goal and priority your board wants it to be.
Sounds good. Any other comments?
So my earlier comment, I was kind of driving towards this. if we go to the strategic plan with an ad hoc or to readdress the Annex F, we don't need to have that agendized at the strategic plan meeting, do we?
No, because that's the strategic
What it's all
plan.
about.
But I mean, if your board wants to separate this one specific item, we could, if your board wants, put it as an agenda item in
But now we
at
need
an
to
April
pass-
board meeting.
We need to pass the resolution today.
This is specifically dealing with just a resolution to comply with OES's requirement because they made revisions, ministerial regulatory revisions in the county's plan.
Okay, I'll make that motion to pass a resolution that coincides with the county OAS.
And I'll second that.
It's been regularly moved and seconded that we have a resolution to approve the a plan consistent with the Cal OES. Any other discussion? Oh, Barbara.
I'd like to amend the motion.
Okay.
It would be to approve it with the, what do you say, with the, with,
Condition?
yeah, the condition that we will make this as a priority in our strategic plan.
Okay.
Is that a problem?
That's your guys' motion. You just have
I'm
to
fine
vote
with
on
that.
it again.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. So,
Yeah, but was Jeff good with it?
I'm good with it.
okay.
You seconded, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
but
you did.
that's-
All right, so my first was Director Balin, my second was Director Ringen, and it's to make it a priority during the strategic plan workshop.
Right.
Okay.
Is that right?
I think it's part of the priority discussion, but anyway, yeah. If you want to make it a priority, I mean, you know, I think,
It's not going to be long. I mean, I have my comments ready to submit now.
all right.
Ron Ringen said he seconded it.
So we're ready to go?
All right.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve Cal OES regulations, and then it's been with condition of priority. Is that right? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Okay, item number 5, approve an agreement with the Irrigation Training and Research Center of California Polytech State University, San Luis Obispo.
I'll take this item as well. As you know, and I mentioned previously under the hazard mitigation grant drought discussion, that TUD staff is working on as many fronts as reasonable right now, trying to ensure that we deal with water supply as well as demand side management, which is more on the conservation, unaccounted for water side. You know, we're trying to work with USBR, working with PG&E. We have our potable water distribution system pipeline replacement that's identified in your CIP. You know, we're looking at trying to regionalize the water treatment plants. We're trying to do everything we can to shore up reliability and reduce vulnerability. One aspect of that is on the ditch system. And Dr. Charles Burt is a recognized expert in the state of California, if not the world, working with Cal Poly, ITRC, or better, it's Irrigation Training Research Center, better known as ITRC. I had worked with Dr. Burt in the 90s. He was old then, and I was surprised to see that he's still in charge over there at ITRC. But I've been struggling with how do we meet the needs of our ditch users and the historic character and all the above, but yet make it more efficient. I went through a series of post-grad classes in the 90s when I got to know Dr. Charles Burt. I worked with him when I was at Modesto Irrigation District. They specialize in canal and ditch efficiencies. They've traveled the world evaluating these systems. If anyone's got unique expertise, it's Dr. Charles Burt and his team. They're a university. They're not a consulting team. So therefore, they're not going to come in here and charge us consulting hourly rates. As you know, I forget what year it was, about 2012, 2013, you had a Sierra Nevada Conservancy grant for about $450,000 that funded the ditch sustainability study, and Stantec Engineering won the grant competition and pursued a technical engineering report on ditch efficiencies. Then they also subbed out consulting to cultural and historic, and I know your board's familiar with all of that. Out of the technical engineering side was a recommendation for breaking the ditches down into sections and trying to identify whether or not there's certain sections that were more prone to inefficiencies and water loss. And that was why Stantec recommended the installation of ditch flow measurement devices that we ultimately, and it was partial flumes. And if you're familiar with partial flumes, it's just another way of controlling flow to measure how much water is passing by that control section. I think to date, staff's installed about 22, 24 partial flumes. I've seen one, and having worked in the water industry for a long time, they did a great job. It's a partial flume. It is SCADA, on SCADA, and it's telemetered so that we're tracking data. We've had some problems with data anomalies, but we're going through and fine-tuning those partial flumes so we can break the ditches down into sections to better identify the delivery of water, the diversion and how it flows through the system, and ultimately the delivery of water, so we can find out where some of these water losses are occurring and strategize on priorities and options. What Dr. Charles Burt and Cal Poly ITRC does is they'll be able to use that data along with their expertise, having traveled the world on these canal and ditch systems, to help us take us to the next step in meeting the multiple benefits these ditches provide, but help us do so in a way that brings about some efficiencies. Because other than a little bit of the lining that we do each year, right now that's the only efficiency type project we're doing, other than maintaining the partial flumes and tracking flow data. I want to take it to the next step, and that's where Dr. Charles Burt's team comes in. We've talked. He freed up a schedule. He's booked through the year. That's how busy these guys are. He had a cancellation, and there's a 2-day window he has in mid-April. Staff is recommending your board approve this agreement. I was thinking about doing it under the GM's discretion, but this is an important project, and I think you guys know me by now. If there's an important project, I'm going to bring it to your board so that you have a chance to weigh in, comment, and provide input into this process. But I think that the Cal Poly ITRC team is uniquely qualified to provide expertise for a lot less money than a consultant will. I'm also talking to another individual that's with Mountain Counties. He's one of the companies that supports Mountain Counties on writing a grant for installing for more meters in the ditch diversions. So they're going to be brought into this as well. But the recommended action is to approve this agreement with Cal Poly ITRC, who will work with staff to look at potential efficiencies, and the product will be a technical white paper on recommended actions. And it may be that at this early stage, they think they can do it in one field investigation, analysis, and report, but it may require multiple steps, because I think they may not know how complicated this system is, and they recognize that. So this agreement covers really what they consider to be the first phase, and hopefully we can get it done in one phase. If not, there may be phases down the road. But right now, we just don't know till they get up here, and they plan on spending 2 days walking these ditches, talking with staff, taking pictures, careful engineering notes, and then they'll come back with a white paper on recommended next steps and actions to make these ditches as efficient as possible, given the multiple benefits that they provide.
Right. Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Did I misunderstand? You said Stantec got $450,000 for that grant?
Well,
No, not Santa.
the overall grant was about 450,000.
Oh, okay.
But remember, they hired sub-consultants to deal with the historic and cultural. So Stantec was a big chunk of that, but wasn't the full amount.
Okay. A little cloudy today. Any comments or questions?
You know, I think this is a good step. You know, I've read through their proposal and the key points that they're hitting, and you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what they come back with.
Any comments from the public or questions?
I salute you, Mr. Pattison. Since I think 2011, I've been listening to all this whining and ranting and raving and carrying on about those ditches. So it would be nice to have something officially done. So I salute you.
I can't promise that we're going to get something great out of this, but I think this is our best opportunity. I know Cal Poly ITRC, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is one of the best universities in California, and they have some top-notch professors and engineers. So to me, we're getting a big bang for a small amount of dollars that we're committing to this effort. And I like public-to-public partnerships like this. I think that really speaks volumes about how well public agencies and universities can work together. I also reached out to UC Merced. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But we have other options to help us with the cultural historic side. But I think we'll get some good results out of this. It's not a lot of money. I think that some of the implementation measures may be expensive. So I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm a little concerned about what it's going to take to help us get more efficient. I like the idea of regulation reservoirs. I know ITRC, I know that's probably going to be one of their recommendations, but let's let them do their job, see what they come up with, and we'll take it from there. But again, April 15th and 16th, they'll probably take 4 to 6 weeks to write it up, and then I'm hoping they might be able to even attend a board meeting and give a first-hand presentation, but for the cost, it doesn't allow them a lot of face time here in Tuolumne County.
Okay. Any other public comments? Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement for the Irrigation Training and Research Center of California, Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo.
Second.
Then regularly moved and seconded that we approve the contract with Cal Poly to do our ditch efficiency study. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, item number 6, the Tuolumne Utilities District and Tuolumne County Water Supply Tour scheduled for Thursday, June 6, 2019.
So I'll pick up here again. This tour of TUD facilities has grown. The idea came out of your board discussion some time ago that there was a recommendation to hold a joint board meeting between the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors, Tuolumne Utilities District, to again show preparedness, working together, make sure we're all on the same page, and I think that's laudable, and staff was pursuing that. And as that discussion evolved, other agencies and names came up. And so the result of the ongoing discussion is that the list of invitees has also grown, and in your staff report or board package is a draft itinerary along with participants that have been added to the list over the last 30 days to the point where now we're up to 37. I mean, we're starting with maybe 15, 20 people, and now it's up to 37. And there's a reason why each one of these individuals and organizations have been invited, as well as the itinerary. We're really trying to tell the story of TUD about water supply, the need to make it more reliable, looking at Pinecrest, working our way down through the new regional treatment plant concept at Sierra Pines. And so really all of this is draft at this point. While the date is tentatively planned, the actual line items for all the points on the tour are tentative, as well as the participants. None of this has gone out to these individual organizations. I have heard from a couple of you. I think there's been some good points. Sometimes when you get this large of a group, we get lost in the message. And by the way, what is our message? Who's our primary target audience? What are we trying to accomplish with this tour? Do we need to have all these participants? These are all great questions. Staff has worked through this. We think we understand what the narrative is, but we're bringing it before your board so that your board can discuss this as a whole board to decide. Do you agree with these tentative locations talking about our water supply and ditches? Would you like to revise, delete, change? And maybe we can start with the draft itinerary and let you comment on that. And then when we're done with your input on the itinerary, maybe we can talk about the draft list of individuals that have been added to the list. So with that, I'm opening this up to your board. What do you want to do with this tour? What is our focus, our message? What are we trying to accomplish? Do you want to change anything on the tour? Do you want to change some of the invitees?
Jeff has all the answers to those.
Yeah, I wish I did. I do have a couple of groups that I think should be on here. I know you got 37 already, and I get that, but I don't see the Farm Bureau on here. And I really think somebody from the hospital should be there as well. Just my opinion.
Good input. Ron?
Okay, I have one which I've already spoke to GM Pattison about. When we go to Sierra Pines property, there is the best example possible of the ditch system. We not only have the main PG&E canal coming in, but we have section 4 going off to the right, and then to the left is the main canal, which is also still PG&E, but it goes across a flume. It's all right there at the property. So what I would like to see happen is whatever sort of discussion was going to be about the ditch system and so on take place at the same time that we're going to discuss the new Sierra Pines water treatment plant, which is a major, major project, as we all know. And then when we leave Sierra Pines, we'll be going down Middle Camp and then on to Joaquin Gully. And if we go down Joaquin Gully, just a short distance, a very easy right-hand turn brings us down to the Meadowbrook reservoir that is Twain Hearts, and they have installed an awesome, and they are willing to demonstrate it, a awesome fire water draft point, which has been set up so that the fire trucks can come in, immediately get filled, roll out, nix one in, get filled up, roll out, and I think that this is a perfect time to be able to move that issue forward, especially if we're going to have Board of Supervisors on board who have been not necessarily supportive of this. So that's my suggestion on that.
Barb?
Yeah, I agree about getting really clear on telling our story. And when we start at the top, you know, we have a great water story. We do. We've got, you know, here's our storage, and here's who owns it, and here's Lions, and here's who owns it, and here's who owns Lions Dam, and here's all the federal property, and here's PG&E. You know, just having a narrative because of the field trips that that I've done with mountain counties, I can guarantee you people do not know what they're looking at. When you're driving them up the gradient or down the gradient, they do not know, oh, right outside the window, all those pine trees, yeah, that's overstocked. Encroachment, none of those trees are beyond 30 years old. They weren't here when a lot of us moved here, but now they're here sucking up water, and that stresses out our system. Just doing a narration on what is happening in the Sierra and how that points back to us, trying to get an adequate flow. Certainly discussion of Pinecrest Lake, because that's central to our story. We're so dependent on that regulatory line, and of course Lyons, and even Lyons has a great story. And then the other thing I want to actually comment on, Director Ringen, is that Section 4 area where they have recreation, that shows a variety of beneficial uses. That's the area where Fish and Wildlife stock, the flume system. It actually is the demarcation of what we don't own, what is out of our control, which is east of here is the whole flume and the whole straw to Lyons, and so that's a great visual and a great message there. There's also the flume that goes west, that's another great message, and then the one where all the kids fish in Section 4, and that's great. And there's a sign there that we could walk over to that again toots our horn, and that's the one about all the Sierra Nevada Conservancy dollars, I think, and PGD and the whole project to do fuel reduction. And so that would be a good thing to walk over to. And I think in terms of consolidating time, that has a lot of value. People, if it's just real fast on off and you don't really know the lay of the land and what's really there, you don't have a great feel for our water delivery. And I think that is an area I was going to say how much time we're planning on spending there. Well, not even a half an hour? No. An hour? Well.
So it's leave. So we're there at 12:45, and we're leaving 25 minutes later.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of this revision. Yeah, I don't know about going to the Eureka Ditch if we can see it all right there, because we have the Section 4 right there. And it's also very accessible right there. So in terms of getting on the bus and off the bus, that's a lot of moving around, and that may be a better place, meaning the Sierra Pines property, to tell our story and have folks ask questions and make sure that they understand that. And then also our big fuel reduction, because that's how we leverage money. So that would be my recommendation. And then, of course, Phoenix is really important, because if we're going to have, is it Carolina? Is it who's the person? Carmel. Okay. So IRWN funding is critical. And so the Phoenix Lake project, TUD's worked really, really hard on that. That's critical to our story. So that is really an important piece of this as well. But so I would go for spending more time, and then if we could, because part of our story is how we use this water in its journey. That's our story. And I think I like that idea of Twainhart. We'd have to contact Tom Trott, I think, or to see, because that's a dry hydrant up there. But that would be terrific.
He's on the list of invitees.
Yeah, and he could tell the story there. This is what we did. We were cut back 50%, and we don't have any fire protection. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Why was the Eureka Ditch put on there? Just was there some piece of that was more special?
Yeah, I'm struggling with this a bit myself. I was going to ask, who's the author of this thought?
Eric Hall and I worked on this, so I relied on Eric's intimate knowledge of the ditches to make a recommendation.
So, I was the one who said, hey, I think I need to take you guys on a tour. I want to show you a different story. It's the story that touches us every day. It gives us challenges every day, most of which we aren't really talking about. And then the one item we were going to talk about, the Eureka Ditch, we don't talk about so much. That's a big deal. That Eureka ditch is where there used to be an open ditch. The ditch slid off the mountain. I couldn't, before I worked here, and they strapped it up with pipes on trees, and it sits there today. Those are the things that when I say I want to take you on a tour, I want to show you those things. So that we're at CIP time and we're trying to struggle between this, that, and the other thing, and how we're going to, share this $5 million on the water side. These are the things that I'm looking at every day that I struggle with. So the question was, what was on the Eureka ditch? It was what I just described.
Ron?
I hear what you're saying, but the trip is not to necessarily educate the board. I mean, of course, we will get educated to a certain extent. I think it's to educate the people that are on that extensive list as to how the system works from top to bottom. And we don't need to show them all of our wounds. I mean...
Okay.
Yeah. But I want to just say, how Placer, PCWA, is dealing with this is they're having 2 field trips, okay? Because they're inviting the state for money, and they're going to show them what's wrong. So you invite depending on your message. And I think it would be great if we, worked something into our, we have one on preparedness or where our water, overview. A lot of this whoever's invited, they don't even know what they're looking at. And, but I do think your point's really well taken, especially, it would be worth following up with some of your compatriots somewhere else and going, okay, who are you inviting on the tour? And also Mountain Counties has also offered to help if that's your message and that's what you want to deliver. They can help put the right players together for that issue from state. If it's legislators, that they get that in their mind's eye. Oh wow, it's just hanging up by onto trees, in a steep angle of repose up there. So I really hear what you're saying. I think the rest of us hear what you're saying too. So we just maybe we're in for another one, and we can ask Mountain Counties to here's our message and who do we invite. Yeah.
Thanks.
And I think that this is why I suggested Carmel Brown to GM Pattison, is because she's the one that's signing at the bottom of the letter from DWR about the IRWIMP funds for Phoenix Lake. I had invited her to one T-Stand IRWIMP meeting, and she was blown away by how active the group was and how much it got done. And then I invited her to go on 2 tours of what the IRWIMP group has accomplished with very little grant money. I think it's going to be extremely powerful to have her be able to see, starting at Pinecrest and the limitations we have because of 5608 mess, and then moving on down to where we get to where the new water treatment plant's going to go, which we're looking for money to try and get that done. That's a huge project. And then to see the ditch system, the vulnerability of the actual wooden flume right there, and we can explain that it got knifed by that tree back in 2013 or whatever, and then to run her down all the way to the Phoenix Lake project so she can see how critical this really is for this community. So.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments too, Don. I think we do need to find a balance of showing how the water system works, but we're talking about the vulnerability of the flume. So, in that we have a ditch system that's got some really substandard pieces, I think, rather we're not going to go walk the whole ditch system or anything else with that, and even the guys that are here for 2 days aren't going to see 5% of the ditch system at best. So I think it would be good to show, some of the warts as well of what we're looking at some of this funding for, but that's my impression.
I mean, we could, depending on the importance of this, we could add a half an hour to the itinerary. We just didn't want to keep them out too late, especially if they're coming from out of town. Mm-hmm. But maybe we ended at 4. That grabs a half an hour and put that at Sierra Pines. That'd give 45 minutes at Sierra Pines.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just, how vulnerable is our water supply? How do we get it here? Why it's really critical that we look at getting some additional funding. I sat through the county meeting the other day, and they're looking at increasing TOT funding. They're looking at a parcel tax. They're looking at maybe increasing sales tax, and they're saying, okay, I need it for roads and I need it for all these other components. Well, a county-wide responsibility is how do we look at our water delivery system, which whether you're on a well or however you're doing it, you're still tying into that water supply source. And if it gets cut off, no matter how you get your water, you're going to be impacted. So I think we need to get that regional message out there. So, and if there's some ways to just touch on it, I think it would be good.
Anything else from the board? Any public comment or questions?
So let me just to clarify for today, okay?
Right.
We are essentially either going to approve this draft, make slight changes to the draft.
Well, this is just an opportunity. I mean, I don't need a board. There's no board resolution. It's just input. And based on your input, staff can revise. But, we would like to try to finalize this and get it on everyone's calendar, because I know my calendar is filling up. This is for June 6th with an RSVP date of May 17th. So the sooner we get this out, the better. In fact, we were thinking about just sending it out last week. I'm glad we didn't, because we want to bring it to your board. But we can revise as necessary.
Okay.
So we're just taking notes, and we'll revise and finalize, and then send it to the group. And you haven't really, other than Director Kearns, I haven't heard any board members say anything about the list of invitees. Should we? I'm hearing more ads, so we're up to almost 2 buses. But the reality is probably only half this group will RSVP, and so we can't count on that. I mean, if we have to, we reserved enough seats that we can accommodate this large group just in case. But if we only get half, then we create an option so we don't have to pay for that second bus.
Mm-hmm. The only person that showed up to me was maybe somebody from CAL FIRE on that, but
Add CAL FIRE.
Ron?
Yeah, I almost forgot. I was contacted by a member of the public, and I was asked to bring this up to the board and to GM Pattison that they have intention of driving a private vehicle or vehicles behind the bus and following it. So I'm trying to tip you off.
And that's fine. We anticipated that.
Okay.
Barb?
I would like us to at least pursue contacting Tom Trott and seeing, because part of this is why we're different. How are we different, and why we know we're vulnerable. We've got good examples of our vulnerability, but what are we doing in terms of efficient use of this water? And for Tom Trott and his fire chief to be there and talk about this is what they're doing, because the first 5 minutes matters in a fire, and we have this drafting point right on their for that community there. I think that would spark, even if we had reps from the hospital and from other areas, we're showing how we utilize water in our rural environment. I think that's an important message as part of, here's our vulnerabilities, and here's how we're going to protect them. Yeah.
I might add that, I've seen Ron Kopp there. I think the two of us have been attending all of the Firewise Community Task Force meetings to date. And at every meeting, I've mentioned this kind of Fire Water Nexus. I don't use the term Fire Water Draft Points, but that's what I'm referring to. And in every occasion, CAL FIRE really minimizes TUD, raw, and ditch water.
Yes, they do.
So this is an ongoing communication issue, I think, that I'm not I think the recommendation is to sit down with CAL FIRE firsthand. I've done that by phone, but maybe we need to sit down face to face. But what they confirm what you just stated, Director Balin, that the first 5 minutes is what matters, and maybe perhaps if there's a hydrant nearby or some raw water, they'll use that. But if it's a catastrophic fire, they're telling me that these water systems really are unreachable when you get back into the canyons, and it's fire breaks, it's air support, it's water tenders coming to CAL FIRE. And so, I'm not going to pretend to do their job for them, but I'm just sharing with you what they've shared with me. So maybe it is a good opportunity to invite CAL FIRE and have a one-on-one conversation, but it might even be good to talk with CAL FIRE ahead of time, because at the end of the day, they're the fire chief for Tuolumne County, and they're the fire chief for CAL FIRE, and they keep repeating the same statement every time we seem to be mentioning these things. So in my point of view, it's not going anywhere unless you get CAL FIRE to agree that they feel like it's of importance. So there seems to be a gap, and I think we need to sit down with them. So it might be a good ad for this list.
I would suggest SPI be on this list.
That's a good one too.
They're a huge water user. They're a huge organization to the future of this county. And what we're going to end up doing financially in this county, they're going to have to be a partner, or it's not going to work.
Mark Lester would be a good contact, Mark Lester.
That would either be Mark Lester, who's their public government relations, or Brian Land, who's their plant manager.
Any other comments from the board?
Nope.
Any comments from the public? Okay.
I don't see the tribes on here.
Yeah, they're there.
They're on there.
They're there.
I thought they were, and I was just going through the list.
Bottom fourth.
Oh, okay,
Kevin
good.
didn't.
Okay,
They're right next to each other.
okay,
Right above us.
okay. So I've got SPI, Farm Bureau, Hospital, and CAL FIRE. So probably another 5+, taking us up to 40, at least 42.
We got to get a helicopter, one of the big helicopters.
One of those Chinooks.
Yeah, I think you're right that you're probably going to lose 10 or 12. Just
Easy,
with
yeah. By the way, you can't hear anything when you're inside those helicopters. Have you ever been in those?
Yeah, but you can get out and turn it off.
while it's flying.
Not while it's flying, hopefully. That wouldn't be too good. You gotta shoot.
All right, so
Shoot would be okay.
I think we've heard what the board's interested in. I think I heard some importance for Sierra Pines, and let's stay there longer to talk about the multiple benefits and different facilities that are there. But I think I may have also heard a justification for keeping Eureka Ditch because of its uniqueness. So maybe we just, when we say we end at 3:30, it may be more like 4. We just won't say it. Because most tours I've been on end up being longer than they were planned anyway. So, and we're going to probably do this next week when we send the invite out. Let's see, today's Tuesday. Maybe we send it out this week. We'll tell you this. We'll give your board a couple of days. We'll work on fine tuning this. And I think we'll plan on sending this out Friday. So if you come up with any other ideas or suggestions, we're happy to hear what you have to say. And we'll share that with the full board via email. Okay. But unless we hear otherwise, we've added these individuals. I think we're going to keep the itinerary as is, but we'll informally stay at Sierra Pines longer.
So that means no to going to seeing the dry hydrant? Is it part of the story about preparedness?
Yeah, let me see, how do we swing through Twain Hart? We'll try to make that work. I got to see how much time that takes to swing through there. It's quick, okay. We'll add it, and we'll talk to Tom Trott.
Yeah, because it actually has a message of cooperation. I mean, we are all cooperators. It's
I think it would behoove us to talk to CAL FIRE ahead of time. I don't want to feel like they feel like they're being cornered.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they will, because that's Chief O'Neill up there. Is that correct, Chief O'Neill? It's a community services district.
No, that's the chief for Twain Hart, but if we're going to invite CAL FIRE, then that would be Josh White, probably. And so,
Would be, yeah.
so what GM Pattison is saying is that he might get the feeling, which wouldn't bother me one little bit, that he's getting some pressure put on him. But, you know, that's probably going to be somewhat of an embarrassment.
Well, I will reach out to him and maybe we can schedule some time to talk.
Okay.
So we'll add that.
Okay, doke.
Yeah.
So move on to operational update and
Well, do we just
Approve the field trip?
approve
Well,
approve it with comments?
It's just direction, and staff took notes, so I think we have it.
Okay, so just move on to the next item.
And if you guys in the next couple of days have some revelation, let us know. Otherwise, by Friday, we will send this out to the group.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll move on to item number 7, operational update on the water and wastewater departments.
Ed, we do have a motion on this one.
Yeah, we do.
We do?
You?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
I'll move
Thank
to
you.
authorize staff to send out invitations based upon comments they received today.
I'll second it.
It's been regularly moved and seconded that we approve item number 6. Enough? All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
unanimous.
Okay, item number 7, operational update on the water and wastewater departments.
Good afternoon again. Give you a brief update on what happened back in February. February was a fair amount of snow, which is not untypical, but it's a little more snow we've had in more recent past, but not something we're not used to. It did provide some challenges. On page 1, the flows at the regional plant were about 2 times normal, the dry weather flow, obviously due to I&I. On page 2, neat little picture down there at regional with the snow. That's not a picture we see every year. Page 3, some more snow up in Miwok in the Leachfield area. Give an example where Dennis did some plowing for us in order to get up there and do our operations and routines up there. Collection crews there on page 3 installed a clean out on Orchard in Sonora to provide a place for us to do some routine maintenance there. Wasn't there before. It made challenges up there keeping that line clean. There were 7 reports of sanitary sewer overflows, with 0 of them being reportable, so that's good. We're doing good on as far as those reportable SSOs. We're still at 0 for the year. And due to the weather, mostly responded to 19 after-hour call-outs due to weather, and that's just talking about the collections department, sewer collections department. Page 5, ditch activities, very, very busy with low snow and removing 100+ trees and floating snow. We did a little presentation up here a couple weeks ago on that, and you saw those pictures. Page 6, we're continuing with the annual flushing. That's going according to schedule, and nothing new to report there. Although, just note that we do keep track of all that water, so I can report it later.
Just a question on Pinecrest, Don, where it's at 90% of average. Do you think that's just they're holding it down with all the snow melt we got up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. Page 8, showing a picture of condition of one of the tanks up there in Cedar Ridge, one of the poor tanks, one of many. On page 10, again, providing lots of training, safety for our folks here. And also, Andrew Johnson obtained his grade 1 collection system maintenance certification. So we're pretty proud of him for doing that. So I'll answer any more questions you might have.
Very good. Ron?
So one thing that concerned me as I went through this report, excuse me, these 2 tanks that you have pictures of, that does not look good to me. if my memory is correct, I think that when we all worked on the CIP, or at least staff did, and it came back to the board, we okayed a, part of it was that there was a provision in there, in the CIP, to get $8 million in loans. And I don't think we've done that. I don't remember us having that come before the board. These tanks maybe fall under that category, because this looks pretty dire.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Ron. I was under the same impression, and I couldn't tell you as to the status of that $8 million and our ability to borrow that or not. But one of those two tanks you're looking at isn't ours; it's in the Mueller system. But that's not your point at all. So that's just, today, and this changes almost twice a year. But today we have 75 tanks, treated water storage tanks online. 51 of those is either poor or in fair condition. That's just the state of our tanks.
No, I get it. I guess what I'm concerned about is that if one of those tanks that TUD is responsible for ends up coming under the radar and getting fines or penalties due to water tests, and or even worse, someone were to get sick, the fines and the penalties and all that are going to make the going out and trying to get the loan look pretty minuscule. That's just my thinking. I hate loans, but I would hate fines worse, or somebody getting sick.
Well, I wasn't here in your 5-year rate plan, which then folded into the 5-year CIP, but Steve was, and he's here. He might have information.
I just chime in, Steve Sheffield, Finance Director for everybody. So for those of you who don't remember or aren't aware of it, the $8 million in loans, when we did the rate study, Dave Andrus went through, we projected what our costs were going to be, O&M, and we projected our CIP plan for the next 5 years. In order to balance that, we thought we would need to borrow $8 million. Now, that number completely changes year to year based on what kind of grant funding we receive. For instance, the CIP had several $1 million going to the Phoenix Lake project, which is eventually going to be funded by the IRWM program. So when we went into it, it wasn't, hey, go out the first day, get $8 million loan, and then we'll figure out how to spend it. It was a matter of each year we develop our CIP, and in that CIP, here are the projects that take priority. Does this tank need to be done fiscal year 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever? So each year we've done that to the tune of $5 or $6 million in water over that time period. Well, in that same time period, we have had projects come up such as Quartz Stent, which was fully funded by Cal OES. We've had SRF projects. We've had some. So every time we get a grant, and it's within our scope of what we want to do for improvements, we're leveraging that grant money and not having to get a loan. When we got here and we took over with no reserves and deficit funding, the goal and objective was to get a balanced budget. And one of the ways of doing that is we don't go out and borrow money if we don't have to. And so over the past 4 years, the only thing we've actually borrowed on was to get the new hydrovac truck. Other than that, we're holding off. We still haven't completed our CIP for this year. We have through June 30th. They're updating the CIP here. So if we need to get that $8 million to build Sierra Pines or that regional treatment plant or whatever, we will. But no project was not built or done because we did not borrow money. We didn't need to borrow money. We're still doing everything that was in the CIP, and if this tank gets to the top of the list, then we'll do that tank. But we have not, I want to stress, there's no project that we have not done because of a lack of money. We will need to finance if we do these bigger projects or if we don't continue to get grant funding. We've gotten a lot of grant funding over the past 10 years. So I hope that helps. Bob?
How's the availability now of grant funding? and state and federal both.
Well, when you say grant funding, again, I think you heard the presentation by Eric and that sort of thing. We've been highly successful, I think to the tune of 35 or 40 millions over the past 10 years in there. Most of it with water districts, it's very specialized. And so a lot of it's coming from SRF, a lot of it's USDA, FEMA, these various ones in there. And what happened with SRF, a lot of it went from full grant funding to be more zero interest loans. And so, there's a payback period, then you get into the disadvantaged communities type things and that sort of thing. So, it depends what we're doing. Our biggest problem that I see, and Don may have a different feeling here, is we have these tanks, number one. Number two, we have the kind of the rotten stuff that's in the ground. Well, I'm not aware of any grant funding that will replace your crummy pipe from 100 years ago. If we had that, we'd be going after that left and right. Well, Erickson and his team does a great job going after every grant available, within our sphere of influence, I feel, and they've been highly successful.
We are ramping up our grant efforts beyond where it's already been successful. We're really tightening it up. Lisa's working with Michaela. We're working on a Lead Behind / education marketing brochure that really tells the story of Tuolumne Utilities District, and over the first couple of pages, and then each successive page is going to be a representative picture with concept engineering, intelligent title, cost estimate, paragraph summary about all these projects that are priorities that we believe are extremely important to push the envelope on water supply reliability, reducing vulnerability, tighten up conservation, and we've identified probably, 5 to 10 projects, including the regional treatment plants. I think tanks is a good one. I think maybe we need to add that as part of this marketing brochure, and we're going to be getting that done by April sometime. We're going to be hitting the state where they hold an annual workshop where all the state and federal granting agencies meet with those that are interested for an entire day, and there's presentations followed by one-on-one meetings where we plan on meeting with these individual state and federal agencies. I'm hearing from some of my colleagues that federal dollars are available right now. The state's more tight. In fact, on the state water board side, I don't think they're releasing any reimbursements for about a year. We're having a problem with the state because they've switched their software finance system and they're having problems. And because of that, we are not getting reimbursements for the Phoenix Lake project that was funded through Prop 1 of the IRWM program. And I'm not sure if we have any others, but yeah, we're not getting any reimbursements right now, and they're not taking any other applications. So right now we're going to be focusing on the federal dollars, but that's not to say we're not going to focus on the state, because I think the state has some consolidation type grant funding. The state's interested in consolidating disadvantaged community underperforming systems. So we're going to try to tell that story through this marketing brochure that we'll share with your board later in April. But staff's very working hard on this.
Great.
We do believe there's federal dollars out there that may be available. And I know that Lisa emailed me today. We're always scanning for grants. And I think another one popped up. I don't know what project I was referencing, but we'll bring this to your board in April.
Okay.
Talk more about grant funding. And we'll add these tanks. They're important. As Don Perkins pointed out, there's a lot of them out there that need replacing. I mean, there's just not enough money. And at the end of the day, your board's going to be seeing the CIP come back for adoption, and there's going to be revisions, and your board's going to have an opportunity to revise, reprioritize, and delete. So remember this discussion today, because you're going to get it again in late April for the CIP workshop.
Can I just chime in on the CIP? Eric Johnson and I have been working for months on this, and we've not just now, but we're bringing in all the superintendents to help us kind of fine tune this. But I've been poring over this, and just so you know, right now for 5 years, just on the water side, we're in better shape on the wastewater side, but on the water side, I'm looking at trying to pare this down. $8 million in year one, 8.5 in year two. Year three, we're looking at $10.5 million. I And we got to figure out a way to pare that down to 5. And so that's why, this tank gets moved over, to the next year, because I've got a tank like Volpone that was a little more priority. So I'm just afraid that the 5 million isn't enough to get some of these tanks and distribution systems improved before they look so bad and actually are so bad. So that's all I'm just trying to say. It's particularly troublesome just today, last few days. I've been poring over the CIP and just trying to figure out which system am I going to move to the right to the next year before we get down to 5 million.
I just had one question on your report. Who are our big raw water customers? Because we had 10.7 inches of rain, and we still sold a whole bunch of raw water. Yeah.
SBI is our biggest, I believe, is our biggest raw water customer.
Okay.
I think that was a rhetorical question.
Keep all those trees wet. Okay.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Don.
Good report. Thank you.
Next, we have staff reports. Any public comment? Questions of Don? Okay. Staff reports?
I think I'm it.
You're it?
So I do want to update your board, or at least report on Aqua. Brian Sanders, who's an Aqua staff member, he goes around. We're in Region 3, and he's the liaison for Aqua for a number of regions. So he came by and met with Liz Peterson, County OES, who are also Aqua members. I don't know if you know that. And with me in my office last week, he left this package of information. Unfortunately, he only gave me 2, so I don't have enough to hand out to each of you. But I think the takeaway out of that meeting is that in the near future is an opportunity for you as board members to serve in Aqua if you're interested. You don't have to, but as a dues-paying member, you can serve on the Region 3 board. Staff can as well. Right now, Region 3 consists of Joshua Alpine from Placer County Water Agency. The vice chair is Shannon Cotola, South Tahoe Public Utility District. The other board members are Patrick Hayes from Mammoth Community Water District, Gene Mancebo with Amador Water Agency, Mike Minkler, Calaveras County Water District, Steve Palmer, Georgetown Divide Public Utility District, and Rim, I always have problems, Scherzinger with Nevada Irrigation District. So that's your Region 3 board. But there's a host of other committees at Aqua. And as you know, Aqua represents all water utilities and cities with water interests in the state of California on a range of issues from, say, Bay Delta to desal to conservation, groundwater. There's anything related to water, they have a committee for it. I have this 2-sided page right here. I hesitate to read all of it, or I thought I had a 2-sided page. That's 1 page. I'm not sure where it went, but there's a lot of committees, such as Groundwater Subcommittee, Legislative Committee. It goes on and on and on. I'm bringing this up because the window of opportunity for you to put your name in the hat is coming up. And if you miss it, you'll miss it for this year. They do it every year, so I think the nominating opportunities finish in May. The announcements are coming up soon. I'm just giving you a heads up. And I will have staff send an email to your board with all the committees, the Region 3, and the dates that you need. If you're interested, you need to let us know to make sure that your application gets in on the nomination form. And then I think they go through a competitive process. And if you win that nomination process, you'll either be on the Region 3 board or on one of the topical committees. The Legislative Committee is probably the most popular committee. I think they meet every 2 weeks in Sacramento. So depending on which committee you get on, it could be time consuming, but the Region 3 board chair and vice chair also serves on the Aqua board. Mm-hmm. And I think they meet once every 2 months. So if you're interested in any of these things, we'll get this information out. It's all right here too if you want to stop by my office. I'm sorry I don't have more copies, but we will get the information out. Melissa?
You do receive this information in your TUD emails also?
Oh, you're
From
directly
Aqua?
from Aqua.
And one other thing, we did not do a motion on item number 7.
What was 7?
Do you want Ed to stop right now?
To accept and file that.
The ops
The
report.
ops report, yes.
Okay.
We can do that. You can do that right now.
I move that we accept and file the ops report.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded that we move and file the ops report. All those in favor, signify by
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm done with my staff report.
Unanimous. Ed's done with the staff report.
Okay, March 13th, we went up to the El Dorado Water District, Water Agency, and heard Peter Brostrom speak. And I think, Ed, you were there. Lisa, you were there too? Yeah, and that was about conservation legislation that is really about, according to him, indoor use plus outdoor use plus commercial, industrial, institutional, irrigation, water distribution system losses. So it deals with the distribution of potable water only. So I wanted to make that part clear. But he said this is not about limiting water use and this is not about rationing. But at any rate, he represents DWR, and he brought a lot of things to the table, because now is where there's 17 pilot groups, entities, including CCWD, where they're flying over and looking at gathering data for outdoor water use, and which is really fascinating. He had a great PowerPoint. He is a governmental entity, and he presented it, I think, very fairly and impartially. And he's been invited here to speak for the IRWM in May. So it would be great to invite everybody in the county, including Joel Mesker from Calaveras County. And so it's really informative. And just a couple of highlights is, this is the ground floor of determining how much outdoor water we need, and also calculating potable distribution losses. That's what this also focuses on. So the flyover for the green data is about 15% of the cost, and the heavy lifting is going to be in the analysis of the data and coming up with standard definitions. And some of the standard definitions that haven't been standardized yet are 8 variances, which the state allows. DWR allows, including for fire protection, which I thought was very important. And so it says, and also wildlife. So this is not limited list, and there's, again, no reporting on losses in raw conveyance, just potable conveyance. So I guess the bottom line I wanted to say is this is where I heard that the having drought contingency plans with emergency planning side of the county can make FEMA and money available. It's important to establish the joint plans ahead of time, and that's obviously what we're doing. So with that, I think that's about all I have, except I thought it's going to be very worthwhile. I would encourage everybody to come to listen to what the state is doing, and of course it's DWR and State Water Resource Control Board. It's also going to have a hand in it too.
Just a quick note, Director Balin. Carolyn Lott did reach out to the DWR spokesperson, and he has a conflict for that date, so they're scheduling for September right now. And then the other comment he had is that they hope to be done with some of the input from Calaveras County Water District that could make the meeting more meaningful here in Tuolumne.
Okay, and it was really clear it's going to burden small water districts in terms of reporting, but it would also add, it would mean local control, even though I think it's 3,000 acre feet. Can you
Yes,
recall?
so we're going to be under this, again, a new unfunded mandate with a lot of reporting. And for your urban per capita water use, they're ratcheting down from, I believe, so as of 2020, it's going to be 57 gallons per capita day. That means per person, you can't use more than 57. And by 2030, they'll be down to 50 gallons per person per day.
But that's different. That's indoor use.
That's indoor.
That's not outdoor.
That's the indoor, and then there will be an outdoor water budget And again, there are variances for fire, ag, I think there's some environmental, so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting. I'm not happy about these mandates. I think they're unfunded. I think it's a form of an unpaid water grab, but then, I'll take that discussion offline if any of you are interested in talking about conservation in the state of California. But, it's a huge mandate that's upon us.
I just want to say Ed had brought up a question, and he hasn't been the first to bring up the question is, all this water we're saving, who gets it? And essentially, it's for downstream benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, even though it costs us.
Well, the 40% we saved, in the last drought, stayed in Pinecrest until the end of the year when PG&E said thank you very much and sent it all through Spring Gap, and we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue.
Oh, it was more than that. It was
5 million, wasn't it?
over 1.2 million.
Oh, 1.2 million. I heard 5 million.
So, yeah, for PG&E to generate more power. So.
Anything else, Ron?
Yeah, the committees or the meetings I, just went to in addition to TUD meetings were the County Fire Safety Committee meeting, which is just starting to gear up on what they're doing for fire resiliency in the county. So that'll be interesting to see as that unfolds. And then I was at the first part of the county revenue options meeting the other day to look at what the county is looking at from how do we get some revenue, and they're trying to go after some of the same sources that we're thinking about from some of our overall water infrastructure resiliency component. So it will make sense that we work together and look at that overall program.
Jeff?
Yeah, I attended the Tuolumne County Business Council on the 20th. Ed was the guest speaker. In fact, TUD was the sponsor of that meeting. And Ed, you did a great job, and heard a lot about it from some of the people that were there afterwards. They were very impressed. I know that there was a few jaws hit the floor when you spoke about what we divert and what we actually wind up selling, and that caught a lot of people's attention. But that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Ron?
Okay, 314 was right here with all my fellow TUD board directors in the strategic planning special board meeting. 315 attended the Mountain Counties Water Resources Association DWR outdoor irrigation briefing at EID. I just want to give a little add-on to what Director Balin said. What they've done is hired an Australia firm. This has to be really inexpensive and a really great use of taxpayer money to fly drones over all of California. And they've taken pictures of all the landscape, the homes, yards, and all that. And that we were told at the beginning of the meeting by John Kingsbury, the executive director of Mountain Counties Water Resources Association, that the fellow putting on the talk, let's not shoot the messenger. He's trying to let us know what they're doing and so on. But I have a real problem. To me, this is a huge intrusion, privacy intrusion, number one. And then number two, I've been to John Kingsbury's property, his home, and they used his home and property, vegetation, and part of his neighbors as the final example. And what he and I spoke at length afterwards, and the issue is that it's inaccurate. It's people making a decision of a picture that they're looking down at from X number of feet. And like he was pointing out, there was one area to the front and right of his property that was brown, and they were calling it unirrigatable or not irrigatable. And that was totally improper, because what that was a very, very green, lush lawn before the drought. And so now they're going to classify that as not irrigatable. So I think this whole thing is just a ruse. I think it's a huge waste of the taxpayer money. And of course, the finals, this is only a study by DWR that will then go to the Water Resources Board, who will then take that information and come up with whatever sort of probably onerous restrictions they're going to be. I don't know. I just shake my head. I think the best question of the meeting came at the end, and I heard a rumor that it might have been our GM Pattison that put this one up, but to John Kingsbury to ask it. But it was exactly what Director Balin said. And so, with all this water that's going to get saved, who's going to benefit for it? Where's it going to go? And you know, the speaker was an all right guy. I'm sure he's just fine. But I've never seen anybody do the shuck and jive dance around an answer like that guy did for about 3-4 minutes. He could not answer that question. So, at any rate, enough of that. 320 attended and participated in the T-Stan Irwin Joint Water Advisory Committee and JPA meeting. And that's it for me.
Thank you. I'd like to add on to what Director Kern said about our CM Ed Pattison at the Business Council. He gave a fantastic description of what what TUD does, and just all the services we provide, how our operation works, and just a real overall description of what we're all about and what we do. I heard a lot of comments from a lot of the old timers in the business community afterwards, like Jeff did, and I was just so impressed. It's the best description I've ever heard of what TUD is all about and what we do, and I just want to thank Ed.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. With that, I think we will recess into closed session, right?
Correct.
Mrs. Clerk?
Correct? You have to read it.
Yeah.
Oh, I do?
I can read it, Bob, because you're not feeling well.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Closed session. A, conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency representative Ed Pattison, Abby Parkon, and Don Turco. Employee organization, Northern California District Council of Laborers, Construction, Production, and Maintenance Laborers, Local Union Number 1130. B, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Property APN 085-050-001 et al. Agency negotiators Ed Pattison, Jesse Barton, and Tom Johnson. Other party to negotiations, Mike Schooner, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, under negotiation, price and terms of payment.
I've already gabbled, right?
Now we recess.
Now you can
Do it again.